Well, we have Ras Mubarak, former member of parliament for Kumbungu. He was going back for that seat. He's leading the charge to take the seat back. But whether he will succeed, only time will tell. He's going to contest in that primary. But this is the news review time now for us to get into the papers and what they have to share with us this morning. The segment brought to you courtesy of Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. What are they offering you? At least the basics that they are offering, they are telling us to let you know about. Free prostate screening, free fertility screening, all of that for free. All you have to do is go to any of their branches. If you're here in Accra, at Spintex, opposite the Shell signboard. If you are in Kumasi, Kronoma Bwehia, behind the Angel Educational Complex, Tema Community 22, there's also Anaji Estates in Takrade, Techiman Hansua, and Esiama Enzema. You can reach them on 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. Ras, a very good morning to you.
Very good morning to you, Benji.
It's good to have you. This is the second time within about a month, right?
Absolutely. See how quickly time flies.
Right. So we've had the month of Ramadan, we've had the Eid, the small one, and there have been a number of developments as well since the last time we interacted. As far as IMF program is concerned, the approval of same. As far as our economy is concerned, now we're being told a lot of the banks from last year, a majority of them, incurred losses on the back of the domestic debt exchange program. That's according to the year's audit financial statement. There have also been those reactions. In fact, today it's something we're talking about. The National Peace Council, which has now come reacting to intemperate statements on the political floor, whether NDC or NPP, and how the masses should react to them. Any quick reactions to any of these thoughts? I mean, stuff that we've missed in between before we get into the papers.
Well, I mean, it's no surprise that the banks have taken a hit, in respect of the domestic debt restructuring. Things aren't going very well for a lot of people, and it's reflected, in the outlook of the banks, and that gives us cause for worry because these losses that the banks are continually incurring could as well result in job losses, and given the hardship that we are faced with already, even for people who are in continued employment, is difficult. How much more, those who are not gainfully employed.
Right.
So there are tough times ahead, and we can hope that the government, because the onus really and truly lies on the government to walk the talk. And walking the talk would require for the government to do the necessary things that would bring us back on track, that would reduce excess expenditure that, things that we shouldn't be spending money on, the frills, in government. As we speak, government officials are still traveling out of the country. As we speak, they're still flying, first class, and clearly these are cause for worry, that when we are in dire straits, when we are in so much difficulty, we are not cutting down expenditure to reduce the burden on the poor taxpayer. Whenever the president moves, you still see the long convoys and the rest of it, and I don't see any leadership, in addressing some of these challenges. My biggest fear is the long-term effects.
Right.
When an economy takes a hit for a long time, its effects on people's livelihood over the years to come are quite devastating, and we all should brace ourselves up for tough times ahead. Now, in respect of the Peace Council's wake-up call, intemperate language.
Why do you find it funny?
Well, I think it's a little late in the day. We have seen instances where they should have stepped in much earlier, and we've seen inertia, on the part of the Peace Council. So I'm really and truly hoping that as we gear towards, the 2024 election, they wouldn't wait till things get to a head, before they do step in to caution people. Because whether we like it or not, this is the only country we have. Whether we like it or not, we've got to make Ghana a great country. It's not a perfect country, all right,
Right.
but it requires for all of us, to do everything within our power. And indeed, no nation is perfect, but all of us would have to put our noses to the grindstone and bring it to the levels that we require. And that would require for institutions such as the Peace Council, not to be firefighters, but to take initiatives, and
So not to be firefighters, but to be preventers of fire, so to speak. That's what you're saying, right?
Absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
prevention is cheaper than prevention is cheaper than curing, as they say. So I'm really hoping that they will be up and doing.
Okay.
Now, obviously, we've had a very fantastic holy month of Ramadan for many of us. It's been a month of spiritual cleansing and gearing up for the things ahead. And I think for our own health, it requires for everyone every now and then to actually fast, just to have a feel of what people who come get a 3-square meal a day are going through. And really and truly, it's tough for many Ghanaians struggling up and down the country.
Let's get into the major stories in the newspapers. I'll start with the Daily Graphic, and it says, Green Ghana Day, June the 9th. Commission pledges to protect forest resources. I'll be getting into that story. There's also NCA forensic audit to weed out fraudulent SIM registration. 6.17 million cards deactivated, 11.1 million more to go. On page 20, Parliament can't compel EC to adopt guarantor system. That's according to a lawyer. And then Jospon secures $30 million for rice production. You remember that bit about homegrown production and all of that. We'll get into that story. In fact, let's start with it. But on the back page, right before we get there, Adriana pipped Gold Stars to keep top spot. They lost recently, I believe, to Kumasi Asante Kotoko, but now they've come back and they are maintaining their top spot. At least they've opened a 3-point gap at the summit of the league log. And so Adriana Stars, after 28 matches with 50 points. Mediama, after same, with 47 points. Bichim United, after 28 matches as well, with 45 points. Asante Kotoko languishes in 5th spot after 27 matches with 42 points. Of course, they can't overtake Brecum Chelsea if they play that match outstanding that they have. Now, let's get back to that story. The Austrian government has provided a $30 million facility to Jospon Group of companies for the expansion of its rice production enterprise in the country. President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, who commended the Austrian government for the gesture as he announced it in Accra yesterday, noted that the Jospon Group had already established 16 integrated recycling and compost plants, all through the support of the Austrian government. President Akufo-Addo was speaking at a launch in honor of the Austrian Chancellor Karl Nehammer, who is on a 3-day official visit to Ghana. And that is the story. I guess this is a facility that has been secured from the Austrian government. We celebrate it and we hope definitely that it yields the sort of results we seek, like the Nigerians have been able to turn the tide when it comes to rice production. Rather than importing, they are growing in their own country. But let's turn to that story on Green Ghana Day, and from there we'll do the story on the EC. I have a lot to say about this Green Ghana initiative, and tomorrow on my Blunt Thoughts, you can expect me to go there. Now, Green Ghana Day, June the 9th, Commission pledges to protect forest resources, And June the 9th has been set aside for Green Ghana Day 2023. The day has been set aside for the planting of various tree types and species, ranging from ornamental to cash crops, shrubs, and fruits. The 2023 planting, which is the third consecutive edition of the National Climate Change Reversal Exercise, is targeted at planting 10 million trees across the country. Let me pause there and share a few thoughts with you. Ghana Fool. So, we're supposedly going to expend about 2.5 million Ghana cedis, which we don't have in the first place, on this new initiative, or at least this new installment of Greening Ghana. It is good to green Ghana, but in the meantime, we owe previous facilitators money we've not paid. So you've not paid people, government is indebted, yet we're going to budget another 2.5 million Ghana cedis that we don't have for a new initiative. So it becomes a vicious cycle of debt. Why do we do this? And I have said time and again, how do we account for the other installments of Greening Ghana? Accountability in terms of we planted X number of trees. Why survived? We hear in some cases goats chewed our trees. Why survived? And then this is how far they've come as a sort of proof. This is how much we expended in the past, and these are the gains, for which reason we can build on that and continue this. It's almost as though we continued with initiatives without this step-by-step process. Who does that? And in any case, when I listen to the lands minister, I cannot help but smirk a bit, because you have an initiative like this and you're touting it. Yet just yesterday in the Ghanaian Times newspaper, I think on page 11, we're talking about how we're losing a lot of our, is it kukrodua, something of the sort, mahogany, okay, odum, in many parts of our country. Years ago, we're told that we're losing our forest cover at an alarming rate. So, I mean, while this is good, I don't see it really tackling the problem. There are so many ifs, whys, wheres, whens to answer, and I'm simply not seeing those answers. So, Greening Ghana is fantastic, but are we just throwing money down a rabbit hole? That's my question. Parliament can't compel EC to adopt guarantor system. That's according to a lawyer. And constitutional lawyer and former member of Parliament for Kumeu, Yaoban, has criticized the procedure used by Parliament to ensure that the guarantor system becomes one of the means through which a Ghanaian can register to vote. According to him, the legislative body cannot compel the Electoral Commission to include the guarantor system in the constitutional instrument for continuous voter registration, which the electoral body sought to lay before the House. He said, Parliament's suggestion that the EC should include the guarantor system in the CI was at best a recommendation which the electoral management body was not bound by any law to follow. I find this take rather curious, rather interesting, especially on the back of previous happenings, but hey, they are his thoughts. As a former member of Parliament, what do you make about this, and what are your thoughts, Ras, on greening Ghana and what is going into it?
So in terms of greening Ghana, obviously quite exciting. You know, I mean, growing up, you would see a lot of, I'm from the 80s stock, if you know what I mean.
Right.
You would see a lot of neem trees up and down the country. These days, you hardly see, you know, some of these trees. We haven't kept them appropriately.
That's a fair point. I don't even remember the last time I saw a neem tree. That's an interesting point you make.
It doesn't take so much, you know, to keep a neem tree growing. You know, to expend that kind of money, you know, to green Ghana is something that, you know, we would all have to raise questions about, especially when there has not been, you know, accountability on how previous monies have been expended, you know. But a brilliant idea. Indeed, it is a duty on all of us, you know, to ensure that our country is appropriately greener, especially in light of, you know, the challenges we're facing with the climate.
Right.
We can't, you know, overemphasize the importance of planting more and more trees, just so that, one, it has its own beautification effects, you know, and there's no doubt that trees beautify, our society. And then also you have to look at the impact on our environment. And indeed, in the face of emerging climate challenges, this is something that ought to be done. But of course, there's got to be accountability. In my own area in Kumbungu, I haven't seen, much greenery as far as this project, is concerned. You would expect that in every district, in every corner of the country, young people, older people would be encouraged, to get involved. But this is also not something entirely for government. It behoves on all of us, to plant little trees and flowers in our respective, places of abode and schools. This day and age, you go to the schools and even, the whole place is sakura, so to speak. You don't have any. I mean, go to all of these big schools in private schools in Accra. You don't see much greenery. It has to start from the schools. It has to start from the homes. So that kids learning at school would begin to absorb the importance of planting trees and looking after these trees. It's one thing planting the trees. Is another looking after the trees to ensure that they grow to the stages that we all require for them to grow to. So yes, let's have an account of how the previous monies was expended, and then we can talk about additional debt. I don't know whether you would want me to have a bite on the.
Yes, go ahead. The lawyer's take on the Electoral Commission and the new CI, or the CI, so to speak.
As we in the journalism profession say, comment is free, facts are sacred. Facts are that constitutional bodies have every right to present bills to Parliament for approval. That right is within Parliament. As a matter of fact, Parliament has, the mandate to tear apart any bill that comes before it and make insertions, make deletions, make additions, and you also would have to look at, the damage that not including the guarantee system would do for our country. We are at a stage where we are told that the Ghana card would have to be literally, the main document, for acquiring EC card, Electoral Commission voting cards. How many Ghanaians have the Ghana card? In my own constituency in Kumbungu, people can hardly even have access to the Ghana card. People live in.
Well, per the last reports that I saw, there was also facilitated some about 100 million Ghana cedis not too long ago, though we're looking at quite a huge debt that the Electoral Commission had. Part of that has been paid. Some cards that were in the process were released to the National Identification Authority. There is quite a chunk of Ghanaians that have the Ghana card. But the reality too that there is another chunk in the millions that do not have it. And I want to believe the concentration in some areas is more than others, which is why there is a bit of a concern about disenfranchisement by way of the Ghana card.
Benjamin, Ghana is beyond Accra and Kumasi and Takoradi and Tamale.
That's exactly the point I am making.
There are still a number of people who do not have access, and we would be remiss to disenfranchise these millions of Ghanaians of a constitutional right to vote. And as I said, the inclusion of the guarantee system has always been a part of our electoral system. And I don't see why the Electoral Commission would want to remove that. When it comes to Parliament, I do believe that sincerely, even members from the majority would do the right thing to ensure that as many Ghanaians as possible are not disenfranchised, from getting an EC card. But as I said, it's this comment. Parliament is clothed with the necessary powers to rip to shreds whatever bill that comes its way, to make insertions and deletions and additions. And I do believe that when we get there on the floor of the House, those insertions and deletions would be made. As to whether or not there would be consensus, because we tend to be steeped so much in petty partisanship, where we fail to look at the overall national interest. I would be so sad if this is reduced to MPP NDC, where a certain group of people would say we don't want the guarantee system included, and others saying we want the guarantee system to be included. There comes a time in our lives when we would have to put the country first. And on the issue of inserting the guarantee system, it would be one of those issues that we require, and when I say we, I mean we the people, require, our members of parliament from both sides of the aisle, to do the.
Well, let's get into the Ghanaian Times newspaper now. Green Ghana Day targets planting 10 million trees nationwide. My charge to Mr. President, my charge to the Lands and Natural Resources Minister, Mr. Jinapo, is that moving forward, 10 million trees, let's be accountable and say, oh, we planted 10 million trees, and of that number, this survived, this is the value, and we're going to protect them, maintain this, and maintain that. That's the only way to go. But this bit about a lack of accountability and then just every year going back and expending our taxpayers' money cannot be anything but, I'll leave that adjective out because I don't think it's a pleasant one. But Veep woos Austrian investors to Ghana, applauds 34 million euro Jospon Group and Compec partnership. Then President nominates Justice Mrs. Tokonu as new Chief Justice. There's been a bit of a ping pong back and forth on that matter. Was it going to be Yoni Kolendi? Was it going to be Mrs. Tokonu? But in the end, it appears Mrs. Tokonu prevailed, and she's been penciled for that position, penciled down for that position. But I think we've spoken about all of those issues. I'll give you a bite on the Chief Justice narrative. She would be the third now since 2007. We had Georgina Theodora Wood, we had Sophia Kufu, and now we are likely going to have Mrs. Tokonu, Gertrude Tokonu. I'll highlight the story and then allow you to react to that together with anything you have to say about Justice Tokonu. Now, mass SIM registration exercise, NCA to block 11 million SIMs at the end of May 2023. Where's page 19? Let's look for you. Let's find you very quickly. All right, there you are. So more than 11 million active subscriber identity modules will, by the end of May 2023, be deactivated if the owners of such SIMs fail to register by the said date, the National Communications Authority has warned. The authority said only Ghanaians on national duty outside Ghana, foreign diplomats, and refugees who are exempted from the SIM registration exercise would have their SIMs not deactivated by the said date. The Director General of the NCA, Mr. Joe Anochi, who disclosed this at a news conference in Accra yesterday to brief the public on the progress so far made on the mass SIM re-registration exercise, said by the end of the deadline, subscribers who did not genuinely have Ghana cards would have to prove that they did not have Ghana cards to prevent their SIMs from being deactivated. Your thoughts?
We're still talking about SIM re-registration and the fact that many Ghanaians do not have, Ghana card to have their SIM registered. There are still concerns about people using other persons' Ghana cards, to register SIM cards. These are all things that ought to be sorted out by the NCA, and let's see how it goes. I mean, you would remember that I was part of a group that was hugely opposed to the, the way the NCA was carrying things, the SIM registration exercise, simply because it wasn't done in a manner that provided dignity to Ghanaians, and also in a manner, that was seamless. So, with time, I believe they can improve on the re-registration exercise.
Right.
But some of us are still of the opinion that we have to fight crime, and in fighting crime, we must not commit an illegality. The Minister for Communication has still not, gotten the necessary legislative backing in Parliament, as far as I'm concerned, to embark on this SIM registration exercise. Now, on the CJ's nomination, she's first of all not the senior most person, at the Supreme Court, but I mean, over the years, it's always fallen on the senior most person to be appointed Chief Justice until recent times. But you can understand why she's been appointed. Obviously, Justice Doche would have been the senior most, but he's also going on retirement, I'm told, in a couple of months or so. Anytime a woman is included in leadership, it is fantastic because they come to the table with different ideas. They come to the table with a new way of looking at things. So I'm excited about the inclusion of women in leadership. She's a staunch Christian from the Central Region. She's got a very distinguished, career both in private practice, and at the bar, at the High Court, and subsequently at the Appeals Court. You remember she was appointed to the Appeals Court in 2014 and subsequently elevated to the Supreme Court. She's very solid, no doubt. Now, people, however, have concerns about her temperament, and I've spoken to a lot of senior.
What is your concern about her temperament? And you also said, you made mention of the fact that she's been nominated, and we know why. Why do you feel that is?
No, when I say we know why, I mean, given the fact that the two senior most justices would have been, going on retirement very soon as well, and it would not really and truly appoint somebody who it will not be exciting.
Obviously, who is about to go over the hill, right?
On retirement, so that is exciting. More so because she's woman, so she comes to the table with a new approach to things. But the big elephant
on that point, I find it curious sometimes when we talk about because she's a woman. I mean, she's qualified. She has everything. Is it important whether or not she's a woman?
No, it's exciting when we're talking about inclusion, and we live in a macho society. We live in a society where men are grabbing all the topmost position. So if we have women, qualified women who are equally coming to the table with their own expertise and experiences, that makes it the more exciting. It encourages the young lady in Kumbungu or elsewhere up and down the country who may be looking up to, women for inspiration. So that's the context within which I make the point. But the question as to whether or not she can clean up the sullen image of the judiciary. And the judiciary, like the police and other institutions of state, have come under a lot of fire, for all manner of corruption. So she would have a lot of things in her entry to deal with.
In other words, she'll have her work cut out for her, right?
Have her work cut out for her. One of them would be doing things to clean up the image of the judiciary.
Right.
As to whether or not she can assert her independence is something that we would have to see. They say give a man power, a woman power, and you'll see their true colors. We've seen how His Excellency the President has failed to show leadership in tackling some of the big things like Galamsey that he promised. So it's always good when people are given an opportunity, but as to whether or not they can deliver, would be something we leave to time. But I am looking forward to her tenure. There are concerns from senior lawyers who's agonized the Supreme Court about her temperament as well. People believe, for those that I've spoken to, that sometimes she talks down on lawyers who appear before her. So I believe it's something that
do you have any proof of that?
No, I mean, I'm not a practicing lawyer.
So who are these who have shared this with you? Lawyers?
I would not want to put their names out.
Oh, no, not names, but I mean, are these lawyers who shared that with you?
These are senior lawyers whose arena is the Supreme Court. I've spoken about six senior lawyers, from both sides.
And all of them say the same thing. They corroborate this.
They say very good things about her. The fact that she's qualified, she punches above her weight, but also the fact that she talks down on lawyers sometimes. But of course, the position of Chief Justice is administrative. The devil is in the detail when it comes to administering justice, when it comes to dealing with matters that come before the
Okay.
Supreme Court. So
All right.
we would have to see how she navigates her way through the complex web of having to deal with high-profile political cases. And
Okay.
we hope that
She has her own trajectory if you go and look at the rulings she's delivered over time. But unfortunately, we have to make tracks in about a minute. So if you could just quickly, have you wrapped with that? So we can just look at two stories very quickly from two different papers. Very quickly.
we can look at those stories.
Staying in the courts, the Daily Guide has a number of stories we've looked at. Otumfuo clocks 24 on the golden stool. Congratulations to him. And 3 Takwa gold robbers busted. But I wanted to stay in the courts and do the story. Sunyani High Court jurors have gone on strike over unpaid allowances for transportation, court attendance, and sitting. The strike has resulted in the suspension of all high-profile cases in the Bono region, including murder, rape, and robbery, among others. The jurors claimed that their allowances had been in arrears since March 2022, prompting their strike. And then the Business Finder newspaper, Valco's rebound continues. You remember last year the strike, the industrial action at Valco and everything, and how crucial Valco is to our national life. So at least the story says Valco's rebound continues with the new leadership. Quick reactions to this as we wrap.
Well, we would have to, when I say we, the state would have to release the necessary resources, to the courts to do their work. Because you're talking about, administration of justice.
Right.
You don't want a situation where somebody else will find transport for jurors and then the course of justice would be perverted, So, and I know for a fact, having, been a member of parliament, having served in government, that the releases tend to delay a lot, to these critical institutions. And it doesn't help in the delivery of their services, to the public. So let's do what is right to ensure that they get the necessary releases and timely to be able to do their work. Of course, whilst we talk about Valco, we can't, forget the fact that today is the 51st anniversary of the passing of Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. He should be turning in his grave, looking at how badly we've mismanaged everything that he's bequeathed us, and it would be nice if Valco can be resuscitated, if it can be revived, to provide the necessary services. In all of this, Benjamin, in all of this, what we are failing to do is to have leaders who are actually leaders. More often, we tend to elect talkative and politicians. Politicians don't care about the next generation. They care about the next elections.
Is that a general statement? You're a politician too. Is that a general statement?
I'm a politician, and I can tell you for a fact that majority of the politicians make the few of us who are in it for the public good look very bad. And if politicians are providing the necessary leadership, if they are concerned about the next generation, we wouldn't have to talk about things like planting more trees, because it will be a given. We wouldn't have to talk about issues like Galamsey as it is now.
Right. I just have to do this and give you some 30 seconds to react because of the comment that comes through. But there's this one as well. Folks, look, so there's a post on Twitter about someone finding a new Chief Justice nominee, if you like. Once she said that she wanted wigs and suits gone. This has been a topical issue back and forth. She is said to be somewhat conservative. We'll see what that shapes into when she becomes Chief Justice. Will we have wigs and suits gone? Will we use some African prints and go to court? I think for me, as someone in the system, I think that would be fantastic. I don't know what your quick take is on that. And there's also this. This is what I wanted to. Idrisu Harun says, Honorable, monitoring you live in Gushegu I wish you victory in your upcoming election. You have some 40 seconds to react to these two, and then we go.
Well, I mean, it will be revolutionary, to see wigs and suits go. But of course, even in the UK, where we have copied a lot of our codes in law practice, these things are going. So gradually, we would have to make do. We would have to, let these relics of colonization, go away.
Okay.
We are 2 weeks away from the parliamentary primaries.
Right.
And we count on your prayers, Benjamin. We are poised for victory on the 13th of May.
Thank you very much, Ras Mubarak. It's interesting how you say counting on my prayers. Ras Mubarak, former member of parliament for Kumbungu. Of course, we wish you the very best, sir. Thank you so much for joining the conversation. All right, so we'll be going to sports shortly. In one of the papers, they talk about Tottenham Hotspur and that thrashing 6-1 at Newcastle, and how the players have pooled resources and they want to pay back their fans who traveled to watch them. But there's also the whitewashing of Arsenal by Manchester City. The title is slipping away, isn't it? It looks very bad right now. If you're an Arsenal fan, your heart would be in your mouth. But Manchester City has a game in hand. Before we go into sports, though, Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic aided us to bring you this segment. They're offering free prostate screening and free female fertility screening. Here's where you can find them in Accra and other parts of the country. Spintex opposite the Shell signboard in Accra. Kumasi Chronomabwe here behind the Angel Educational Complex. Takrade Anaji State Tema Community 22. Techiman Hanswa and Esiamanzima. Reach them on 0244 867-068 or 0274-234-321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. Up next, we serve you sports. Stay.